Hello and welcome. I'm Geeta Mohan and you're watching World Today. Now we begin with the big story of global outreach by both India and Pakistan post the Pahalgam terror attacks and Operation Sindoor. Interestingly, both the Indian delegation led by Congress MP Shashi Tharoor and Pakistani delegation headed by former Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari are going to be in Washington, D.C. around the same time, engaging U.S. lawmakers, policymakers, think tankers to put their side of the story forward. All eyes would be on the level of engagement both sides managed to secure. Tharoor's team earlier had traveled to Guyana, Panama, Colombia and Brazil to speak on behalf of the Indian government's fight against Pak-sponsored terrorism following the heinous killing of 26 Indian citizens in the Pahalgam terror attack. Now, Pakistan's People's Party chairman Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, on the other hand, was in New York earlier, where he met Fu Kong, China's envoy to the UN, not a surprise there. While India is engaging all UNSC permanent and non-permanent members, barring China, to ensure India's position is understood by the Security Council, Pakistan is just engaging China to ensure their interests are safeguarded. Bilawal expressed gratitude for China's support to the Chinese ambassador. He raked up the issue of Kashmir yet again and urged China to play a role with the UN resolutions. The Pakistani delegation is also now to travel to London and Brussels after the Washington, D.C. visit.
It's no accident that the Pakistanis have also sent a delegation abroad, but they're not going to as many countries as the Indian delegations are. They're focusing on what they consider a few key capitals, namely Washington, Brussels, London. That seems to be the thrust of the Pakistani effort. There's going to be some perhaps increase in interest because of the fact there are two dueling delegations, as it were, in the same city.
Well, it's not just the dueling delegations. The U.S. is doing its own balancing act between India and Pakistan, with President Trump on the one hand saying that Pak-U.S. trade talks will start soon, and on the other hand, India and U.S. could strike a trade deal very soon. Describing the relationship between the leaders of the two countries, India and the United States of America, as very strong and very positive, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said he was optimistic that both countries will strike a trade deal before Trump's July 9th deadline kicks in. He was addressing the U.S.-India Strategic Partnership Forum, that is US-ISPF, in Washington, D.C. Lutnick's remarks come in the backdrop of India seeking complete exemption from the additional 26% levy imposed by U.S. on its goods. The additional tariff of 26% has currently been paused until the 9th of July, while the baseline tariff of 10% on Indian imports still remains in place.
India is trying hard to be one of the earlier countries, which I appreciate. But these kind of deals used to take 2 or 3 years, and we're trying to get them done in a month, which is, just not the ordinary DNA of trading relationships between countries. India put the right person on the other side of the table, and we've managed, I think, to be in a very, very good place, and you should expect a deal between the United States and India in the not-too-distant future, because I think we found a place that really works for both countries.
Now, he is the biggest Indian investor in America, and now Kumar Mangalam Birla is making his boldest bet yet. A $4.1 billion aluminium rolling mill in Alabama, thousands of jobs and decades of commitment. This comes as India and the US race to finalize a historic trade deal. Birla's investments tell you something loud and clear. This partnership isn't just diplomatic, it's deeply strategic. Our next report tells you how KM Birla's billion-dollar vision is powering a new India-US economic era.
As India and the United States inch closer to finalizing a long-awaited trade agreement, Indian industrialists are already backing the US market in a big way. At the forefront is Aditya Birla Group chairperson Kumar Mangalam Birla. Over the last 16 years, Birla has poured $15 billion into the US economy, making him the largest Indian investor in America. From aluminium giant Novelis to new greenfield projects, Birla says the US offers what industry values most: clarity, stability, and long-term opportunity. His latest mega bet? A $4.1 billion aluminium rolling mill in Bay Minette, Alabama, spread over 3,000 acres. The group's largest greenfield investment anywhere in the world. It will create 1,000 new jobs, adding to the 5,400 workers the group already employs in the US.
We have a cumulative investment of about $15 billion here in the US. We are by far the largest investor from India into the US. Ours has been a very good experience. We've been here for about 16 years, and we look to invest further going forward. We have an ongoing greenfield project in Alabama in a place called Bay Minette, which is an investment of $4 billion. And in fact, that is the largest greenfield project we have ever invested in, anywhere in the world actually.
And Birla's not just bullish on business, he's framing the US as a strategic partner for decades to come. That optimism echoed across Washington this week at the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. At the event, US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick confirmed what many had hoped. A trade deal between India and the US is closer than ever. Lutnick said a trade deal could be finalized in the not-too-distant future.
The idea is when they put the right person, and India put the right person on the other side of the table, and we've managed, I think, to be in a very, very good place, and you should expect a deal between the United States and India in the not-too-distant future, because I think we found a place that really works for both countries.
But the forum wasn't just about economics. It also offered a personal touch from Usha Vance, Second Lady of the United States and wife of Vice President J.D. Vance. She shared heartwarming memories from their family's first visit to India in April, particularly their private time with Prime Minister Narendra Modi at his residence.
Meeting the Prime Minister, that was really very special. We'd actually had a chance to meet him before. And it's funny, my kids saw him. They were sort of sleep deprived in Paris, and they saw an Indian man with a white beard and white hair, and they just put him in the grandfather category immediately. So they are very into him. They just love him. And he really cemented his status by giving our 5-year-old a birthday present that day. So when we were able to visit his home, they just sort of ran up. They were hugging him. He was just incredibly kind and generous to them.
Now this comes just weeks before the July 8th deadline, when a paused 26% US tariff on Indian goods could kick in. Both sides are now racing to finalize an interim agreement. The long-term goal is to double bilateral trade from $191 billion to $500 billion by 2030. India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal confirmed that both countries are working shoulder to shoulder to finalize an interim agreement. A US delegation is visiting in India this week, working on the interim framework. The India-US story is no longer just about potential. It's about momentum. It's the rise of a new global economic axis built on ambition, trust, and a shared stake in the future.
The world now awaits how President Vladimir Putin will retaliate to Russia's Pearl Harbor moment after Ukraine had launched multiple drones targeting Russian airfields and destroying over 40 aircraft. Meanwhile, in a major escalation a day after Russia suffered one of the biggest attacks, Ukraine's SBU security service claimed it hit the road and rail bridge linking Russia and the Crimean Peninsula below the water level with explosives. The SBU posted a video on its social media channels showing an explosion at the bridge. The SBU said in a statement that it had used 1,100 kilograms of explosives which were detonated early in the morning, damaging underwater pillars of the bridge, a key supply route for Russian forces in Crimea. to discuss this and more, I'm being joined by Sandeep Unithan, senior journalist and author, tracks this war, has been tracking this war very, very closely. Sandeep, this is major escalation. Now, explain to us what is happening with Zelensky. First, you see the airfields attack, and now the bridge that connects Crimea. Critical for Russia when it comes to a warm water port for Russia, and they've damaged that one sea link.
Absolutely, Geeta. In fact, what we've been seeing over the last 48 hours is Ukraine carrying out some very audacious attacks deep behind Russia's interiors, right 4,000 kilometers away from the frontier with Ukraine. And the attacks on the airfields, the 5 Russian airfields, some of them were 6,000 kilometers apart, very far away from the front with Russia. And these are some of the most incredibly complex special forces come drone strikes launched against any country, probably in the history of conflict. So Ukraine is very, very desperate. It has its back to the wall. It's not being able to alter the situation on the ground, which is very grim, with Russia having captured something like 20% of Ukrainian territory over the last 4 years, and is continuing to slowly inch ahead in other places like Sumy. And Russia has the upper hand on the battlefield. So this is Ukraine's way of trying to raise the costs for Russia by striking deep inside.
But inviting what, Sandeep, over here? What's the intention? What are they trying to invite? Putin's wrath?
So this is where they are on dangerous ground, Geeta. Now, while these are tactically brilliant, these operations, if you look at it, the way they have struck at the bomber fleets so far apart in Murmansk and in Siberia, which are like two of the most far-flung regions of the Russian Federation. Now, to strike at those places, strike at bomber bases, now that is a red line that they have crossed, because let's not forget that the strategic bombers that were parked out there are part of Russia's strategic bomber fleet, which means they're part of the triad that launches nuclear weapons. This is a critical part of the air-launched weapons platforms, and knocking them out would seriously degrade Russia's ability not just to launch conventional attacks, but also for conventional strategic deterrence, which it requires these bombers to fly patrols over the Arctic, to fly along the US airspace, as they have been doing since the days of the Cold War. So it has seriously degraded Russia's strategic capabilities. And that is the worry, because Russia will now retaliate in some manner or the other. It's been almost 2 days that we are literally counting down to that Russian response. It could be very swift. It could be devastating. Possibly stopping short of a nuclear attack. It would obviously use some very high, powerful, visible tactical weapons derived from strategic weapons like the Oreshnik hypersonic ballistic missile, which Russia has used once before in 2024 to signal to Ukraine. Is possibly they're looking at hitting Ukrainian targets across Ukraine with large numbers of these missiles. So it will be a very large kind of attack that Russia would plan, using a combination of these missiles, drones, and possibly cruise missiles. More of what we have essentially seen in the past. But it's Ukraine here, Geeta, as you mentioned, is fighting a desperate battle on the ground. It's trying to alter the status quo, trying to get Russia onto the negotiating table at Istanbul. The attacks just happened a day before both sides met yesterday in Istanbul. Talks didn't go off very well because Russia is stuck to its guns on various conditions that it has demanded of Ukraine, which Ukraine finds very difficult to accept, Geeta.
Right. Sandeep, also, it's not just how audacious these attacks are, whether it were the airfields or Crimea, the bridge and rail link between Crimea and Russia. But more importantly, the audacity of these attacks, that they are making videos and ensuring that the videos are put out for the world to see. But that's not it. Sandeep, thank you so much for joining us. There is more to this entire story. Is Europe really behind these attacks? Have they supported? Have they helped Ukraine in any manner. Everybody's trying to stay away from this attack because this could invite a lot of trouble for those countries as well, should they be involved and should Putin really want to respond. We were talking to German ambassador to India, Ambassador Philip Ackermann, and you can see the whole interview on India Today Global. But here's a part of the interview where we're talking about whether if Europe was involved or knew about these attacks planned by Ukraine. How is Germany looking at what has happened in the past 2 days? The attack on Russia, unprecedented. Russia has never faced or has ever been faced with such an attack, and expect a reaction, but did Europe know about it?
It is quite an operation, one has to say, and I'm, getting my knowledge from open sources here, but it's quite fascinating to see, what such an operation can cause, what damage it can cause, and how well it was prepared. So it's quite an impressive military performance, if I may say.
Yeah. You guys want to come in? You guys can come in.
Do you think this was all Ukraine, or was there support from NATO?
So what we know is that the Ukrainians have a very sophisticated drone production. So basically, it will be, after this war, will be very interesting for us to see and also to purchase maybe. They have a very good way of producing simple but super effective drones. So I think what you've seen is a consequence of their year-long development of these drones. I think the Netflix series style element of it was the lorries parked near the airports. That is quite fascinating to see. But I think the devices that struck were Ukrainian productions, where you have to see that this is a country that can really produce some very, very efficient arms.
Sure, but I mean, after Spider's Web, obviously we're still trying to find out exactly what happened there. It does seem as if the tables have turned, and Europe looks like kind of the warring party, whereas the US is talking about peace. I mean, this attack came just as leaders of Russia and Ukraine were going to meet, and it looked like the peace deal was in its last few stages. Do you think Europe, in a sense, now bears the brunt of what happens?
I don't think that the peace deal was in its last stages. I don't think that, when you read the Russian conditions, you remember the Russians would not even put their ideas on the table before the delegations met. So I think actually the Russian maximalistic positions have not changed, and these positions are unaccepted for the other side. I think there is no such, not much of a difference between the US and Europe when it comes to peace, that we want to stop this war, that we want to sit down and negotiate, but there must be a sort of a common understanding on which conditions that happens. Now, when the Russians say they want all the provinces as to be regarded as Russian territories, although they didn't conquer them, I mean, there is only, it's still a third or more is still unconquered. Then they say no mobilization of Russia or Ukrainian soldiers anymore, no foreign weapons from the West to Ukraine, and neutrality and never becoming member of NATO. That's not a basis on which you can negotiate. These are maximalist positions, and I think the Americans share this view. We have had Lindsey Graham, the senator from South Carolina, in Berlin yesterday, and he again, put his plan on additional sanctions on the table in Berlin, and apparently he had very good discussions with the German leadership. Chancellor Merz is on his way to Washington right now, so I think we are not that far away from the Americans when it comes to how such a peace should look like. So I think it would be wrong to presume that the Russians came with a ready-made peace deal. That's not the case.
Well, this is just a part of a brilliant conversation we had as part of our diplomatic diaries. On Saturday, it will be going up on India Today Global. Do catch the whole episode of the conversation with the German ambassador. For that, US President Donald Trump stirred controversy this weekend by sharing a post on his Truth Social account that claimed former President Joe Biden died in 2020 and was replaced by clones, doubles, and robotic engineered soulless, mindless entities. The post, originally from a small supporter account, has no credible evidence and comes amid renewed speculation over Biden's health following his recent cancer diagnosis.
Donald Trump has another outlandish conspiracy about his predecessor. This time, he's claimed that Joe Biden is a robotic clone. The American president reposted a fringe rant from another user on a social media that said Biden was executed in 2020 and replaced with a robot. The original post by an anonymous Truth Social user suggested that Biden was replaced with clones, doubles, and robotic engineered soulless, mindless entities.
And this guy gets up. Where am I?
In the past, Trump has attacked former President Biden's mental sharpness during the end of his tenure and blamed his frail health for all manner of societal ills.
Boom. Couldn't do it.
Thank you. Where am I? Thank you. And then he goes, and he points. You ever notice?
He's also promoted theories suggesting Biden's aides used an auto pen to enact policies and issue pardons without the former president's knowledge.
Look, he's been a sort of a moderate person over his lifetime, not a smart person, but a somewhat vicious person, I will say. If you feel sorry for him, don't feel so sorry because he's vicious. What he did with his political opponent and all of the people that he hurt a lot of people, Biden. And so I really don't feel sorry for him.
Last month, while hosting South African President Cyril Ramaphosa in the Oval Office, Trump claimed that while South Africans were victims of genocide, even though police data do not show that the white population in the African nation was any more vulnerable than any other groups.
Our president will respond to you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. President.
It will take President Trump listening to the voices of South Africans, some of whom are his good friends, like those who are here. When we have talks between us on around a quiet table, it will take President Trump to listen to them. I'm not going to be repeating what I've been saying. I would say if there was Afrikaner farmer genocide, I can bet you these three gentlemen would not be here, including my Minister of Agriculture. He would not be with me.
According to a report by the New York Times, Trump's first term in the White House was filled with false or misleading statements. He reportedly made 30,573 misleading remarks, or 21 a day on average, and repeatedly shared conspiracy theories in the lead-up to the 2024 election. Mahashweta Lala for India Today.
Now, is there trouble brewing between one of Donald Trump's most trusted aides and tech billionaire Elon Musk? Wild internet rumors are swirling, suggesting that Stephen Miller's wife, Katie Miller, has left him for Elon Musk. But is there any truth to this political soap opera? That's our next report.
It started with a bruise. Elon Musk showed up with a black eye at a press conference announcing his exit from the Trump administration. He said it happened while playing with his toddler X. But the internet, it saw something else. A theory exploded. What if that black eye came from Stephen Miller himself over an alleged affair between Musk and Miller's wife, Katie? Katie Miller, a veteran of Washington's inner circle, had just announced she was leaving her government post to work full-time for Musk. She had already been a spokesperson for Musk's now defunct federal agency, the Department of Government Efficiency. But her move to Tesla and SpaceX added more fuel to the rumor fire. Then came the tipping point. Musk slammed Trump's $3.8 trillion Big Beautiful Bill, calling it a betrayal of everything Doge stood for. The same day, Katie's hiring became official. Stephen Miller, however, seems unfazed. In a recent interview with Lara Trump, he fondly recalled how he met Katie during Homeland Security calls. There's been no sign of conflict, no public split, no comment about the rumor. So far, zero proof of an affair, zero confirmation of a split, and plenty of online noise. For now, it seems this rumor is just that, a rumor. But in the age of politics and paparazzi, even a black eye can trigger a digital firestorm. With Rudrashish Kanjilal, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
With that, it's a wrap on this show. Goodbye and take care.